Like and subscribe and comment below if you want me to continue, and let's get to the video. I hope you guys enjoy. No, 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 please no, I said to myself, on my knees looking at the smoldering ruins of a once vibrant city and full of life, now deathly quiet. The only sound that could be heard was the sound of crumbling structures and burning flames. I begged anyone and anything, hoping to wake up from the nightmare that was in front of me. My eyes were on the verge of tears, my hands grabbing the dirt underneath me, but I couldn't feel it. Everything felt numb to me. I sent messages to my subordinates, telepathically hoping to receive an answer. The Onis, the ogres, the goblins, any other race, even the demon lords and Vildora, only to obtain no reply from anyone. Maybe they are pulling a prank. Yeah, that's got to be it. Just some sick prank everyone's pulling. I was deluding myself. I knew I was. I just couldn't accept the reality of the situation. This destruction to my once thriving city of Tempest was in ruins. The end result of what was the Tenma Great War, the war we won. It was us demon lords and humanity against the Velda and his angel army, which had later developed into a battle against Yuki Kagurazuka, the person that took everything from my precious people gone, and I will never forgive bastard. Even 6 feet under, I'll curse that man until my dying breath. After I had defeated Yuki, I went straight home hoping to find my precious people there, heartbreakingly only to find this scene out in front of me that was straight out of a nightmare. There were bodies everywhere. I couldn't move my eyes an inch where I would find just more lifeless corpses of the people that had lived and defended the city of Tempest with everything they had. My comrades and precious people had all perished. I brought my hands around my body in an effort to comfort me. This only caused the dam to crack and allowed small tears to run down the sides of my cheeks onto the ground below. Nothing mattered anymore. I was mentally broken. I just didn't know what to do. I tensed up when I felt a pair of hands come up from behind me and wrap them around me, bringing towards the entity's chest and into a hug. Slowly I looked over my shoulders to see who it was. What I saw was a spiky blonde-headed middle-aged man, sky blue eyes that shone with visible sympathy, a small smile that was oddly comforting on his tanned complexion. Before I knew, my body twisted around with little self-control until my head was in his chest. I wailed uncontrollably with the dam finally breaking, and tears began pouring out of my eyes. His orange sweatshirt and white cape were most likely soaked by now, but thankfully he hadn't prized me off of his chest. He simply sat there with his arms around me. This is Naruto Uzumaki, a yokai who has lived on this planet for over a millennia and my best friend, who had sealed himself away in a crystal, only coming out after he had sensed the presence of any humanoid creature. At first, I was skeptical about him, overly cautious when approaching him. After he had introduced himself and told me his backstory, the power that was once known as chakra and much more, in return I told about what had developed during his time in hibernation, or the little amount of information I had on me, even with Shield's help. There were many words to describe Naruto: outgoing, childish, and so many more personalities. However, if there was one word to describe him, it would be powerful. Very, very powerful, much more than the true dragons and my current self. He had helped us during a minimal amount, but it was enough. That's what we thought. It was, however, the destruction around us says otherwise. I had asked him before, with the power that he had, why he didn't use it to protect humanity. He simply replied with, if I were to help everyone, nobody would make an effort to help themselves, they would become too reliant on me. The most I can do is guide them, so they have the resources to push themselves forward. When he gave me his reply, I couldn't refute it. It made sense from a logical standpoint. I never bothered to ask him for help during our time together. Only when times were dire would I ask him, which has only happened once during our time together, where I've asked him to defeat some of the angel armies during the Tenma Great War. There were moments where I would ask Naruto for some advice whenever I can. He asked if he could come along with me back to the surface. I agreed without a second thought. I don't why. I just simply went with it, though he would disguise himself as various creatures to hide in plain sight, using a technique called Henj no Jutsu. I don't know why when it's completely unnecessary. He just does what he wants most of the time. During Naruto's time in Tempest, our relationship had slowly become closer. If there was ever a time where we were free, we would usually spend time together as the best of friends. Naruto had helped from time to time, guided me into becoming the leader I was now, standing by me or in the crowds whenever I'd spent time with my other precious people. And now he is all I had left. I continued to bawl out my eyes into his chest as my hand continuously grabbed the back of his white cape, as if to make sure he wouldn't leave me alone as well. We stayed together for an unknown amount of time. The only thing I knew was that my tears had run dry. My eyes were no doubt bloodshot red, but I didn't care. I was still a mess, still sobbing away until I lulled myself to sleep, my eyes slowly fading into darkness with the sound of burning flames dulling out as I drifted into the land of consciousness. Since the day I left self-isolation and set my eyes on her, I knew she would be someone special, like a gut feeling. Rimiro Tempest was what she called herself, a weird name that also suited her quite well. She couldn't be any older than 13 or 14 years of age. She had long, free-flowing bluish silver hair that reached all the way down to her waist, beautiful golden eyes, and a pale complexion that brought the best of her features, making her look more stunning than she already was. Her clothing I could see was a dark blue yukata and black pants. Strapped around her back I could see a sword, telling me she was a fighter of some kind. When she spoke I thought I was in the presence of an angel. Her voice was harmonic and suited here perfectly. Rimiro began firing off questions left, right and center. I was thrown in for a loop with the rapid pace she was going at, though her response was reasonable after all. Wouldn't you want to get as much information out of some stranger you just met, who had sealed themselves in a crystal? I sure would have done the same if I was in her boots. Before she could continue, I raised my hand up in an attempt to silence her for a moment, which had worked since she had paused mid-sentence, allowing me to answer back a couple of the questions she had asked. In return, she gave me information about what has been going on for the past few years. It seemed she only had the bare minimum amount of information to be able to survive in this, no doubt unfamiliar land. At the end of our conversation and exchange of data, I asked Rimiro if I could come back with her. She said yes. I don't know what compelled me to do so. Just whenever I set my eyes on her, I just seemed to lose control. Not even my late wife, bless her soul, had been able to do something like this to me. Just looking at her gorgeous smile I just knew I made the right decision to come along with her. Over the coming months, I saw the developments of a once small village that had evolved into a bustling city. There were many ups and downs during these events. From being allied to both the armed nation of Dworgen and the small kingdom of Bloomond, Rimiro somehow being able to subdue a powerful demon lord by the name of Milim Nava, and Rimiro successfully becoming one as well. And there were the dark times, fighting wars against both the Kingdom of Farmouth with the help of the Holy Empire Knights and against the Eastern Empires, all successfully defeated with the help of Rimiro and her leadership. Every victory had caused her to grow as well, from a 13-14-year-old to a 17 or 18-year-old. Though I've never seen her so broken before, she had shed a tear before when the First War came and killed many of her subordinates. She had been filled with uncontrollable rage when the Eastern Empire took Vildora, her friend, from her. But the aftermath of the Tenma War had shattered her. I can understand her pain. The loss of a loved can break a person easily. I was lucky I hadn't. When I saw Rimiro collapsed on her knees, bawling her eyes out, I felt uncomfortable. Just seeing her in such a fragile state felt wrong to me. I did the only thing that felt right at the time and brought her to my chest, causing her to look into my eyes. Her once shining golden pupils had considerably darkened, tears running down both sides of her cheeks. I did the only thing I could at the time, and that was to give her a comforting smile and rubbed her back in a soothing motion. The tears came flowing at full force, as she continued to bawl away into my chest and began to continuously grab the back of my cape. I just stayed with her until she couldn't cry anymore. It didn't take long until cries had subsided and the sound of light snoring. It would seem she had cried herself to sleep. I decided to move to a different location, in hopes of getting the ruins out of sight. I brought her to a nearby cave, the very same cave I sealed myself into. I laid her down onto the soft ground, removing debris that could bring Rimiro any form of discomfort. Her sleeping form was ever so beautiful, as if I was staring at an angel or goddess. God, just seeing her sleeping face has my heart racing. I've really fallen badly for one Rimiro Tempest. 3 days have passed since Rimiro had fallen unconscious, days that have left Naruto worried and scared that the silver-haired beauty would fail to open her eyes again. Even under a constant reminder, telling himself that everything will be alright, that she will open her eyes sooner or later. Naruto's worry would sometimes increase when he would notice her body quivering in fear as nightmares constantly plagued her mind, and Naruto not being able to do anything except hold her tiny, fragile hands into his own and feed some of warm chakra into it, in an effort to comfort in any way he can. Naruto just waited, staring at Rimiro sleeping peacefully. After a while, Naruto noticed it, small twitches of the eye, barely visible to the average human. However, to the trained shinobi it was highly visible. It was a breath of fresh air. The blonde. Slowly but surely Rimiro'S eyes began to creak ever so gently until they were half open. Bringing herself into an upright, she raised her hands to her eyes, rubbing out the soot. Once done, she brought her hands down to her lap and began to look around her surroundings. Beginning from the left and slowly scanned the area until her head had reached the right side, where her golden eyes made contact with Naruto's cerulean ones, and a small comforting smile plastered on his face. "Where am I?" she asked, looking around to get a better idea of her location, her barely audible and slightly roughly due to a lack of usage. "We're in the sealed cave," Naruto answered her question, her eyes widened a minute amount in recognition. Her gaze slowly drifted towards me, staring into Naruto's eyes as if searching for something. "How long was I out for?" was another question Rimiro has asked Naruto, her eyes still locked onto his own. However, there was a visible amount of emotion being broadcasted. It was as if they were pleading with him. "About 3 days, Naruto replies back. The answer didn't seem to help as her expression had become downcasted. "I'll be right back. I'm going to get some water for your throat." The blonde began to pick himself off the cave ground, not comfortable with awkward silence. "No!" Rimiro shrieked out, launching her hands towards Naruto's own, grabbing onto his left hand tightly, refusing to let him go. Naruto looked down to where the demon lord had his hand tightly, almost like a vice grip. The blonde's eyes widened in shock at the sudden action displayed by Rimiro. Please," Rimiro begged. "Please don't go. Please don't leave me alone." Her voice was filled with such desperation, that it nearly broke Naruto's heart to see Rimiro in such a vulnerable sight. Naruto's eyes had loosened up and softly gazed at the quivering girl before him. Plopping back down onto the ground, Naruto released Rimiro's grip off of his hand and lifted her petite frame onto his lap face to face, placing her head into his chest and wrapping her around in a comforting hug. Rimiro's own arms slowly reached around Naruto's own muscled frame, hugging him back. "I won't ever leave. You won't ever be alone. I'll make sure of that," Naruto slowly replied to the small girl in his arms. "Promise?" Rimiro asked her question, slightly muffled due to the face buried deep in the blonde's chest. A small grin appeared on Naruto's face when the silver-haired girl asked that question. "I promise," he said, and Rimiro-chan knows when Uzumaki Naruto promises something he will always complete the task. "Isn't that right?" he asked afterwards, receiving a nod from the girl, causing her to ruffle Naruto's clothes up more than they were before. "What about Rimiro? Would she leave me?" the blonde asked Rimiro, earning a rapid shake of the head, allowing a small chuckle to emerge from Naruto's lips and muffled never from Rimiro. Rimiro was acting so meek that it was adorable in Naruto's eyes. He couldn't help himself but kiss the crown of her head, causing a full-blown blush to appear on her cheeks, and a barely visible hue was seen on Naruto's after realizing what he had done, and scratched his right cheek in slight embarrassment. Rimiro had caught Naruto completely unaware when she planned her own sneak attack and pecked the blonde on his left cheek. It was now Naruto's turn to blush uncontrollably while Rimiro giggled at his predicament and her lips had morphed in a light smile. Naruto saw that Rimiro was finally smiling, and allowed his lips to form a smile of his own. They both simply stayed there in each other's arms, eyes locked with one another, never once looking away. They were in harmony, just sitting the silent cave, with one thought going through their minds. I wish to stay like this forever.